I have spent years testing privacy and security products here on All Things Secured, and while there are plenty that I still love and recommend, I rarely talk about those tools and services that I have stopped using. For the average person, these are the things that I consider redundant, wildly overhyped, or designed to solve a problem that just isn't a mainstream threat. So here's what I no longer use and what I trust instead. So here's a hot take to start us off. I don't like using privacy screens. Aside from the fact that I don't like it dimming my screen, I just don't think it's that effective. And I recognize that Samsung has just released a new feature on their phones that uses hardware to kind of create this privacy screen without the use of an actual screen. But the fact is that someone can still be looking over your shoulder and seeing everything you do. A privacy screen only helps at certain angles. And my opinion is you shouldn't be doing anything that sensitive on your phone anyway out in public. So a privacy screen just kind of gives you this sense of privacy and security when there actually isn't that much privacy and security that you're gaining from it. So if you're using privacy glass and you like it, fine, but I wouldn't go out of your way to spend extra money to put a privacy screen on your phone. I don't do it anymore and I don't like it. So you want to know how many times I put my phone into this Faraday sleeve over the past 3 months? Not once, not a single time. Now, these are great products and they are effective at what they do. They block all incoming and outgoing radio frequencies so that if your phone is in here, it's basically like a brick. It can't be tracked, it can't be monitored in any way. But the reality is that the benefits of this, especially in relation to the cost of buying a Faraday sleeve, are just very minimal. You can just leave your phone at home if you don't want to be tracked, or put it in a different room if you don't want it listening to you. The number of times that I've actually found a legitimate use case for this bag is so minimal that I don't use it very often at all. I no longer use the incognito window. Even that term incognito feels really deceptive to me. I don't know if you know this, but a few years ago, Google settled a $5 billion lawsuit alleging that they spied on users who were using the incognito window. They were still tracking them, even though that term incognito makes you think that you are not being looked at, you're not being tracked in any way, and yet they still were. Instead of the incognito window, I would much rather use a browser like Brave or Helium that out of the box provides better privacy. It limits tracking, it limits fingerprinting that can be done all in my main window. I don't have to open a separate incognito window. I just browse the internet like regular. RFID blocking wallets have been sold to us as a solution to a major problem. The thing is it's not a major problem. YouTube channel Veritasium recently did this video with Marques Brownlee, very interesting, where they showed how tap to pay can be exploited to make payments that you weren't intending to make. And that's kind of what this whole RFID blocking thing is about, is just making sure that nobody can pass by your wallet and charge you for anything on your credit card without you knowing. There are two problems with this. One, it's not a big problem. We're not seeing headlines all the time about how somebody just had their life savings drained because they didn't have an RFID blocking wallet. It's just not happening. But second, even if somebody were somehow able to scan my credit card and make a purchase without my knowledge, my credit card company would reverse that. It would be fraud, and so I wouldn't be liable for any of it. So again, we're paying for a product that solves a problem that isn't really a big problem. For most people, I don't think the antivirus software is that useful. It's one of the reasons why you haven't heard me talk about any particular antivirus here on this channel or recommend one, because frankly, I don't use antivirus on my devices. I'm sure there are some cases where antivirus can be useful or where it saved the day, but I think the reality is that the threat of a virus for most people isn't that high. Social engineering is much more likely to have an impact on you and you're being hacked than some kind of virus that you get by downloading something. Again, if you already use an antivirus and you like it, great. I just think it's kind of snake oil. You never quite know if it's working or how it's working. You just kind of pay and hope that it's doing its job. Dark web monitoring is one of those features that most password managers tack on as like a value add. Not only are you getting a password manager, you're also getting dark web monitoring. But what value does dark web monitoring have other than letting you know that your password and username are out there on the internet? Spoiler, It probably is. Most of your username and passwords are probably out there in the dark web somewhere. That's why 2FA is so important, because it doesn't matter if somebody has my username and password. I have a two-factor authentication that makes sure that they can't access my most important accounts. I have honestly never gone into the dark web monitoring to find out which of my usernames and passwords have been stolen, because I just assume that all of them have. These kind of authenticator apps, the ones that you have to open it up in order to get that 6-digit code to put in, I just don't use them very often. Matter of fact, rarely do I ever use them. If I do use an authenticator app, often I'll use the one that's part of my password manager. And I know there'll be a lot of people that say, whoa, what are you doing? You're storing your passwords and your 2FA in the same place. I get it. It's just an added level of security, and I'm not doing that for my most important accounts. If I have an important account, I'm going to secure it with a 2FA key instead. And believe it or not, these are becoming more and more available to use with a lot of different accounts. It used to be it was just a small number of accounts, but now I use my 2FA key with all sorts of accounts, and I would much rather have that plus my password manager that stores all of my 2FA codes than to have to go through and open a standalone authenticator app. It's one of those things that, because of the added friction, people are less likely to use that security because they just don't enjoy having to open up their app, find that app, wait for the code. Hopefully you can type the code in before it disappears and the new one comes up. I just don't like standalone authenticator apps anymore. I do not use or recommend integrated password managers. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine you're using Chrome or Edge to browse the internet, and it offers to save your passwords for you in the password manager. This is something I talked about in a previous video, where I don't think we should be using products or services that were not designed from the ground up with privacy and security in mind for those purposes. And this is exactly what I mean. I don't want to use my internet browser to store passwords. I honestly don't even like using Apple's password manager, because even though it is integrated and it works well and it's better than using Chrome or Edge, I would much rather use a third-party password manager like Bitwarden, 1Password, or the one that I use, Proton Pass. So if you're using anything other than a third-party password manager, I think that you should make that switch, because I do not use these type of integrated password managers anymore. One of the biggest selling points of VPNs is that it protects you when you're on public Wi-Fi. I mean, I think I've even said that on this channel a few times, and yet I do not use a VPN on public Wi-Fi anymore. Now hear me out, because I still use a VPN, mostly to access geo-restricted content such as websites or streaming services, but I don't use a VPN on public Wi-Fi, mostly because I just don't get on public Wi-Fi anymore. And it's not even really a security thing, because our internet connections are pretty well secured now that man-in-the-middle attacks just don't happen as much as they used to. But the bigger thing is, it's just much easier and faster for me to use my data network on my phone, whether that's through my phone or tethering my computer to my phone. I just would much rather get on that network than any public Wi-Fi network that's generally going to be slower or maybe have some security risk to it, even though that risk is very minimal. I just don't get on public Wi-Fi, so I don't have a need to do this VPN over public Wi-Fi. I no longer use privacy browser extensions. This is a rabbit hole that goes really deep. I know there's a lot of people that love these privacy browser extensions, but I don't use them because, again, the browser that I use does most of this just as good, if not better, than using the browser extension. And if I were to use a browser extension on top of Brave, there are some conflicts that could happen that just make it ineffective. So unless you are dead set on continuing to use a browser like Chrome, a privacy browser extension isn't that useful if you're already using something like Brave or Helium or Firefox if it's been hardened. It used to be really popular to use these disposable emails where you just use it once, you get what you need, and then you never use it again. Or that Gmail hack where you take your email and you add the plus sign and then you put something like newsletter or shopping and then you filter that out on the back end. These are all still effective ways to do it, but with email aliasing now being so simple and easy to use, I just don't use disposable emails or that Gmail hack anymore. There are a lot of great services that help you create these email aliases, usually attached to your password manager. But now, instead of just being a disposable email or something that goes into your regular inbox all the time, you have control over how that email address is used, how long it's used, and what email inbox it gets put in. So I like the granular control of an email alias a whole lot more than any disposable email or that Gmail hack. Do you agree with my list here? And are there other things you think I've missed? If so, leave them in the comments and then watch this video next where you can learn some secret iPhone security settings that nobody ever talks about.